Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick after a narrow JMU win over Gardner-Webb.
You can say that again. I mean,
narrow.
Thank you, because I didn't hear you the first time.
13 goal line stand? We needed a goal line stand?
It was maybe this is an overreaction. Maybe I'm still prisoner of the moment here, 72 hours later. Maybe the most horrible watching experience as a JMU fan that I've had. I started my fandom in 2015 as a freshman, watching in the MRD section. That may have been the worst, full 60 minutes of game watching action I've ever experienced.
Yeah, the 2014 season, my freshman year, and we're both very young compared to some of the listeners of this podcast. We're going to be thinking back to a bunch of other games. But the 2014 season, Withers' first year, they started very, very slow. Maryland 50-pieced them in the opener. It was bad. It was just, they didn't look like a competent football team. Then they needed Jimmy Moreland to block a field goal to win on the road at Lehigh. St. Francis game was too close for comfort. They lost their first two conference games. They're 0-2. And then I think they rattled off 7 in a row after that to get into the playoffs and make some stuff happen. So that was first year Withers, first year Chesney. I still have plenty of hope. But yes, it was an ugly, ugly game.
I still have plenty of hope, but I also have plenty of questions.
I think that's valid.
There's still some hope there. I'm still going in with relatively high expectations. I think bowl is still the expectation. If you do not reach 6 wins this season is an utter failure. I still believe that is very much attainable because this schedule is cupcake soft. However, I have a lot of questions really from Chesney and the offensive side of the ball. But before we get into any of those questions, we want to let you guys know that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, BetOnline, the game starts here.
Hell yeah, baby.
Hell yeah. We also want to let you guys know that if you want more JMU talk content, JMU football content, be sure to tune in to the House. You can find it right here on the JMU Sports News Network podcast feed. New episodes drop every Monday with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce. Bennett was the guest host this week with Delvin, and I think he rubbed off on his positivity rubs off. He makes some fantastic points. He comes to the podcast maybe more prepared than we come to the podcast, and really, really does a great job. So you do not want to miss out. That might be the best JMU football podcast out there right now.
Yes, and I don't agree with all of his takes always, but I think the way he formulates them, the way he explains them, it creates what I think is really engaging discussion and not just a weird online yelling back and forth. So I love having his perspective, which in many cases is different than mine.
100%, because he's a former player, so he brings something. We'll be texting during the game and I'll say something and he's just well, no. And it's all right. I mean, that's fair. I, as a fan, I don't have the same way of looking at the game. And I think there are times, and we'll get into kind of the booing stuff in a little bit, where I think from a fan perspective, that makes so much sense. Yeah. But then from a player perspective, it doesn't. So it's really interesting, kind of the two ways of looking at it. And specifically with you and me doing it with him, where we're not your normal fans, we're what they call nerds.
That's right.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That is exactly right. We are nerds.
It brings a really fun side out of it. So you can check out new episodes of To the House every single Monday right here in the JMU Sports News Network feed. And you can watch the full videos, the full podcast over on our YouTube. And you can follow us and JMU To the House at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House.
Heck yeah. All right. Where do you want to start, man?
You get my outline?
I got your outline, but
I guess where we start, do we kind of recap the win? I mean, kind of some.
Sure.
Do you want? We'll break down PFF data in a little bit, so I won't give
Yeah.
like the PFF quote unquote MVP just yet. But JMU beats Gardner-Webb 13-6, held scoreless in the first
Yeah.
half. First time they've been held scoreless since the playoff game against North Dakota State. What was that? December of 2021.
That was a bad half.
So literally all of their first time being held scoreless, all
In the first
FBS
half, right?
era in the first half, all FBS era. The last team to do it was another FCS team.
But also like a juggernaut FCS team in the Fargo Dome.
Yeah,
Like to do it at home against Gardner-Webb was very jarring.
very jarring. Their quarterback didn't really have like a wildly successful game, kind of evidenced by them only being able to put up 2 field goals. Their quarterback, Tyler Riddell, went 17 of 30, 160 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Over on the other side, Barnett went 14 of 22, 135, was sacked 3 times. Neither team had a 100-yard rusher. George Pettaway averaged 8.4 yards per carry. Disgustingly good.
Yeah.
Iowa Dei, his status is kind of uncertain. It's an
Right.
injury that they kind of knew about coming into the season, apparently, and he's played through it before. So they're just going to see how he can manage it, I guess.
News to me after the game for sure. But yes, I guess he has some sort of nagging injury.
Which makes sense why, this guy in the group of 5 who averaged 7 yards per carry, and this is no slight to JMU, but like kind of makes sense why they got arguably the best like group of 5 running back transfer.
Maybe there were some health concerns among other teams, certainly, yeah.
Tyler Purdy, though, he averaged 5.8 yards per carry. The two of them looked very good in the backfield. No Joby Mallory, though, whatsoever.
Nobody's
Which
I guess maybe we'll get into that later. There's no update on Joby Mallory. Taji Hudson, I think people asked about the last one. There's still not really any update. How is nobody asking about Tyshawn Wyatt, though? I haven't heard a question about his status when he's coming back, at least post game. I don't think we got one didn't get one in the Sun Belt press conference. It was basically just the Mike Barber press conference, if you listen to that. It was like 4 questions for him and 2 for everyone else. He has some good ones, but we didn't have any Tyshawn Wyatt information. That seems like a big one. Getting Taji back is a big, like those are arguably your 3 best or 3 of your best offensive players, right? Your starting left tackle, who was like second team preseason all Sun Belt. You have Iowa Dei, who I think he might have gotten snubbed for like preseason
he did.
Sun Belt, but like 1,000-yard rusher last year. And then you have Taji Hudson, who you took to media day. He was your offensive representative at media day, supposed to be one of your best receivers. Having those guys healthy for a struggling offense feels meaningful.
Also insane that Taji Hudson's been on the 2 deep for back-to-back weeks and hasn't sniffed the field. Just great gamesmanship by Coach Bob Chesney. I would expect we hear about Tyshawn Wyatt's availability this week.
Next week.
Like during the bye week. Like whenever
Hopefully.
We'll see. I would be shocked if he doesn't go for UNC.
I would be shocked if Hudson doesn't go for UNC too.
Yeah. I mean, that's what a bye week's for. Get healthy. So you kind of hope.
That should help in theory, right?
In theory, yeah. But also, Jesse Rammel, the starting left tackle, has gotten some good PFF grades, or at least got a good PFF grade after the Gardner-Webb game.
He had a bad game against Charlotte, but he bounced back really nicely. I don't think he's like a liability necessarily.
But then I wonder if he plays better on the right side of the offensive line, or maybe like, but McMurtry's doing well
but
enough on the right
maybe
side.
You rotate Rammel and Wyatt at left tackle because they seem like they're going to rotate a lot, but maybe then they would be a little bit fresher. If you get Rammel fresher against a Power 5, it might go better than it did against Charlotte.
There's a lot of question marks around this team. Like there's a lot of like, if this, then that, if that, then this, what if, then that. But they got the win. I mean, at the end of the day, they beat Gardner-Webb 13-6, man. That's the exact score you were expecting to see, wasn't it?
That's an ugly one. Here's my thing. I felt like the offense was not as bad as it looked. I felt like the defense was not as good as it looked. I feel like the special teams has just been bleh. Like not bad, but also like not, oh my God. Like you really see the special teams emphasis, which we got spoon-fed that stuff during summer camp. And I thought the way they handled the game plan against Gardner-Webb was kind of abysmal. And I thought the way they handled the game plan against Charlotte was very impressive. So I was surprised that the coaching staff, I was kind of starting to buy into a lot of the stuff they were preaching. I thought some of the decisions against Gardner-Webb were mind-boggling.
Yeah, some of those decisions, I guess we can kind of break down here. The one that I want to touch on here at the 10-minute mark of the podcast, the decision to kick the field goal or attempt to the field goal between the first and the second quarter.
Yeah.
They bring the offense out at the end of the first quarter as the final seconds were ticking down. According to Bob Chesney, the postgame, they were never going to run a play. It was all to just draw them off sides, which is kind of jarring considering against Charlotte, you go for it twice inside the 5, and on your opening drive, you're going for it right around the 50-yard line. You draw a guy off sides, you hit Cam Ross for like a 45-yard gain. You're inside the 5, boom, bam, thank you, man. Wow. And then in this game, you're just like, we're not doing that. And then you end up missing the kick. And Noe Ruelas doesn't look like he's a guy that necessarily needs the help of, 7 mile an hour of wind.
He hit a 48-yarder later in the game. So I'm not going to question the fact that he can make from that distance, but like his problem isn't distance. Like if anything, it would be the occasional like accuracy thing, right? Like the idea that he needed a small breeze when his 48-yarder was like still going up doesn't make any sense to me. But also, and I wrote about this in the report card I just published on JMUSportsNews.com. Shameless
Plug.
If it's 4th and 2 in opposing territory, in the offseason, the whole thing that it seemed like they were building was this like power running game potential, right? Veteran offensive line, which even added some transfers in McMurtry, Ramble, Quincy Jenkins from Campbell. They added Io at running back, George Pettaway, who's been phenomenal from North Carolina. We mentioned Joby Mallory. I don't know where he is. Tyler Purdy. They rebuilt this running game that couldn't run the ball. You're at home. It's early in the game. I think it was still scoreless. 4th and 2. Like, if you can't play bully ball against Gardner-Webb, when are you ever going to be able to play bully ball? Like, that was stunning to me that they're like, I don't know. Like, you should absolutely be able to create a push and get 2 yards against Gardner-Webb at home.
And then I know hindsight's always 20/20, but then you look at that opening drive in the second half where it was just run down their throat. You saw they were averaging like 5 yards a carry on that drive. You then have the flashback to this moment between the first and second quarter. And it's like, you can do it. Why didn't you do it?
Where's that intensity on the offensive line? That sort of mean streak. I think they need a little bit of that. They need a little bit of the Dan Campbell Lions, who just the strength is offensive line and running game. That's what I thought with Barnett was going to be the team. I thought they were going to be like, hey, we're going to pound it down teams' throat and then hit some play action explosives over the top. And that would sort of be the identity. Right now, I don't really know what they're going for offensively, which is surprising because I thought they were going to establish the running game very, very well against Gardner-Webb.
So Alonzo Barnett, you mentioned it. He had 9 carries. 3 of those were sacks. So 6 carries between scrambles and designed runs. He gained 30 yards, lost 15 on those 3 sacks, had a long run of 23 yards, which came in the second half, averaged just 1.7 yard per carry. That's just not I think when Barnett runs, that opens up his pass. That opens up the deep ball. When the running game is going, and maybe I'm vastly oversimplifying this, when the running game is going, it brings the safeties closer to the line of scrimmage, and it allows you to hit the deep balls. They never got really the running game fully going, maybe a little bit in the second half, but you couldn't see a lot of the team in the second half because they only had, 4 offensive possessions, and the 4th was just draining out the clock. It just never really felt like a cohesive game. And I guess the next part of it, and we'll probably be bouncing around just stream of consciousness. I mean, the defense is different. They allowed 34 minutes time of possession, 1 3 and out, right? Just not a lot of quick things that then gave the ball right back to the offense. So the offense may, find a rhythm, and then all of a sudden you're not on the field for another 10 minutes of real time. Or even like with all of the rotating happening on the offensive line, or just in general, you might be an offensive lineman who had a drive. You're then rotating each and every drive, And so you might not be on the field for like 30 real-time minutes, and you lose all your steam and you lose all of your just like vibes.
Yeah, it was kind of clunky defensively, and I got to fact check myself. It might have been three and outs, but they gave us many like 3 and outs as 5+ minute drives or something like that.
That's my fault. Yes,
I put
3 and
one in
outs.
the report card, I think, for I don't know what I was looking at, but they weren't creating a lot of report. I mean, a lot of report cards. They weren't creating report cards on the field. They weren't creating a lot of 3 and outs. They weren't creating a lot of tackles for loss. I put this in the report card too. They had 4 tackles for loss in the game, which last year would have been a season low for the 2023 defense against App State. They only had 4 in that loss. 4 is not a lot. Like against an FCS team where you, in theory, should be able to throw around their offensive line a little bit, get pressure, get them in the backfield. I was surprised at how inconsistently they were able to create those kind of plays. Now, they don't give up touchdowns. They've given up 1 touchdown all season. They have, what is it now?
5
They forced
takeaways.
5 takeaways, 3 interceptions. So the defensive backs, I've been impressed with them. Tackling was a lot better this week. They had a grade on PFF of like 70 on tackling compared to like 35 against Charlotte. So there was improvements defensively. I just think they should have done a better job of, I guess, creating negative plays to put Gardner-Webb in these more challenging 4th down positions, because Gardner-Webb is 2 of 15 on 3rd down, but 4 of 6 on 4th down. And a lot of that is because they were getting kind of these 4th and manageable where they could even attempt to go for it. Where in years past, JMU was creating so many negative plays, you were looking at like a 4th and 12. And no one's like, I don't think Gardner-Webb's that insane. Where on 4th and 12, they would have went for it against the 2023 JMU defense. So not bad defensively, but it's a lot different if you can't dominate in the trenches. And I have not seen the defensive line dominate. They've held their own, but like against North Carolina, are you going to go from holding your own against Gardner-Webb to dominating North Carolina? That seems unlikely.
Yeah. Right. Bennett, is there cause for panic?
I'm not going to panic yet because it's 2 weeks in. It's a new coaching staff. It's a new roster. I will say, I think the coaching staff kind of did themselves a disservice in the offseason by putting out a lot of positivity of like, yeah, every position group's looking good. These guys are playing out of their mind, right? We heard from Lyle Hemphill that Michael McMullen was playing out of his mind. I feel like we barely noticed him through 2 games. I don't know if I'll pull up the stats here, but I don't know if he's done much defensively through these first 2 games.
I don't think he's like the 3rd string defensive tackle.
He's got 3 total tackles, no tackles for loss, and they were telling us he was playing out of his mind. So, like, some of it's confusing. Like, are they actually dominant at camp? I think Eric O'Neill has 3 tackles on the season.
All coming against Gardner-Webb.
Yeah. So are these guys, like, playing great in practice and it just hasn't translated yet to the game is it because they're rotating so much? Like, I don't know what the problem is, but it's not what they were saying in camp. In camp, they're like, yeah, we're going to be really explosive offensively. We love what we have at like every position group. Running backs are incredible. Receivers are impressing. Alonzo looks great. Dylan looks great. Offensive line, like every position group was praised sort of beyond what needed to be said. Like as a coach, you didn't have to go that far with some of the praise unless you really meant it. So that's what's so confusing, is to have this incredible praise for this group that then comes out and can barely beat Gardner-Webb. It's like, why didn't you just tell us that it was going to be really hard, tough sledding, and you're still getting used to each other, but you like the potential?
It kind of frustrated me that Chesney then said that in his post-game press conference.
But now he was starting to say, hey, we're rotating a lot of guys.
Yeah, now Chesney in his post-game press conference walked back essentially all of the praise and was like, it's tough with these guys. Like, it's a bunch of new faces. It's going to take some time. Like, that was essentially his opening statement in the press conference post-game. Yeah. And it's like, dude, you're the reason we all thought it wasn't going to take time. Like,
right.
You're the reason. This isn't like us coming on this podcast being like, whoa, they're great. Which, like, it's because we've been told this from the coaching staff and the players, and like everyone around the program has been like, wow, I've never seen 61 guys come together, right, have a pool party and be best friends like this. And you know what? They played the name game. Okay. Like, cool, I guess. Fine. But then, like, you can't say that all offseason and then go scoreless against an FCS team that went through the same amount of changes that JMU went at a lower level, and then be like, it's going to take some time. I mean, it's a bunch of new faces. Say that a month ago, man.
That in August. Yeah, that was confusing, didn't make a lot of sense. I think I'm holding on to some hope, and I think it's realistic that this could be their worst performance of the year, though,
Very
given the way that
realistic.
given the way that they did pull away from Charlotte. Like, they looked better on the road against a Charlotte team that I think is better than Gardner-Webb, and we'll see what happens in that matchup. They play each other this weekend. But I think Charlotte's a better team than Gardner-Webb. They were on the road. Like, I think this may have been just an absolute clunker. I also think Gardner-Webb had a nice game plan and played well, but if JMU had executed well, I think made maybe some better play calls, done a few things a little bit crisper, it's probably a game that they win like 31-6 instead of 13-6. Like, it's one that they should have won by a few possessions, but maybe would have left us being like, oh, why did they score 50? Like, Gardner Webb should have game planned them to like a 31-6 game.
I agree wholeheartedly. And Jacob Dobbs kind of even said that in his post-game press conference where he was talking about the film study they had, and they came out in Wildcat, and they didn't put that on film last week, so they weren't really expecting a Wildcat formation. They came out in a lot more 12 personnel, one running back,
Yeah.
two tight ends, and they only had, I think he said, 2 snaps of that last week, so they weren't expecting a lot, but they came out early in 12 personnel. And so I think Gardner-Webb did come in with the right idea. We're just going to kind of throw everything at the kitchen sink, hope something sticks. And I mean, defensively, it stuck, because offensively, the defense, they didn't get off the field as quickly. But at the end of the day, you held the opponent to 6 points. The week before, you held the opponent to 3 points. Like, you're doing your job in terms of the scoreboard. And now the offense just kind of has to find a rhythm. They found the rhythm in the second half against Charlotte, but it just seems at times the play calling is just head scratching, just utterly confusing.
Would have liked some bully ball, right? Like I was saying earlier, they started the game, I think, with 3 consecutive passes. And I think the idea there was probably to like get Barnett in a rhythm and continue building his confidence. But at the same time, like, just beat up on the FCS team. Like, you should be able to create a push immediately and kind of bury them and then sort of use the passing game from there. I wouldn't be opposed to like early design Barnett runs to get the nerves off, because it's like you can shake off some nerves getting hit and going through a play like that and not necessarily having to throw a curl route that he puts 10 yards over a guy's head, which I don't know if that actually shakes off the nerves or if that adds to the nerves. But I don't think Barnett's the problem. From rewatching, I do not think that Barnett is the problem. He played fine. He had a couple really, really nice throws in this game. There were a couple horrendously costly drops. Again, the receivers, I don't think necessarily held their own in this one, struggled a bit. The play calling was a little bit weird. They also had a few just poorly timed penalties where it was like 2nd and 5. They would run the ball and the guy ran for 20 yards, but there was some holding that brought it all the way back, and then it brought him behind the sticks. They do not seem great when they're off schedule. So if they're like 2nd and long, 3rd and long, I don't love the offense as much. But if they can stay on schedule, which against Charlotte, they did a really good job of limiting penalties throughout most of the game until the end when they got some like unsportsmanlike stuff and like a crackback block. But early in the game against Charlotte, for the first 3 quarters, they did a great job limiting penalties. They were just sloppy here. They were dropping passes, missing throws, having horribly timed penalties. I think it's all stuff that's fixable, and I think a lot of it is not Alonzo Barnett's fault. He made some good throws in this game. His receivers didn't help him out much, and then I thought the play calling put him in some really tough spots.
4 drops this season in total for this wide receiving core. 3 of them have come from my guy Dollison.
I thought Kyle had 2.
According to PFF, he just had 1 in this game.
So last week they didn't count that one in the end zone. It technically as a drop. Okay.
Technically as a drop. So Dollison had 1 against Charlotte, 2 against Gardner-Webb. Cam Ross had 1 last week, and Logan Kyle had 1 this week. Which,
yeah, Logan Kyle's this week would have been a chunk play 4th down conversion. Throw was like slightly off, but he's got to come down with that.
And Dollison's on 3rd down.
Dollison's on 3rd down that seemed to go through his hands.
So I put up on the lower third, Alonzo Barnett is good for our podcast listening audience. I don't think he's the issue. I think it's a mix of play calling. I think the wide receivers aren't doing what they need to do at this point. And I think the fact that the running game just hasn't been something they can lean on really hurts.
I also think it might be time for a little Kurt Signetti vibes in the passing game, where like, if you weren't balling at a position, I'm going to try the other guy. So if you're not balling at a position, like, all right, Dylan Williams, Tajee Hudson, let's get him on the field a little more.
Dylan Williams, 1 catch on, I believe, a 3rd down for first down.
Yeah, would like to see a little bit more of Dylan Williams, who everyone has said catches everything. If people are dropping the ball, like I think he's got to find a way to get on the field more, and hopefully they can target him a little bit. You got to be able to hold on to some passes. Ymir Knight was really good until he got knocked out of the game. He got hit in the face. So like maybe they give him some more opportunities against UNC, but it's not Barnett's fault. Like if you go back and watch, he missed a throw or two, and then there's just a lot of plays that everyone else doesn't do their job, and you're going to look bad at quarterback if other people aren't doing their job correctly.
Dylan Williams, 6 snaps, 1 target, 1 catch, and very limited action. An offensive grade of 72.7, which is 4th best on the team. Would love to see more of that.
I don't fully get that, to be honest with you, because by all accounts, he's like doing a lot of things really, really well. So I'm not sure what the disconnect is and like why he's not.
Maybe there's blocking schemes that he's not good on as a wide receiver on the outside.
Yeah.
I see you staring at the
just looking at PFF. The drops are disappointing. I'll say that. But like Cam Ross, I thought did a few nice things, but at the same time, some of these guys just like get open, man. Like you're going up against an FCS DB, you got to create a big target. Maybe Barnett missed some reads we didn't see on the TV angle. I don't know, but it was clunkier than it should have been because the pass protection was nice.
Pass protection was good. He got some time, and I mean there were other times where it just seemed like Barnett wasn't rolling through his progressions. We don't know what the coaching staff was saying. We don't know what his progressions necessarily were. But and of course, when you aren't watching the all 22 angle and you're watching the TV angle, you don't know the full story of everything happening. But there were a few times where you're like, I wish he just kind of like looked the other way. There was a play where Cam Ross ran an out and he tried to go over the middle and Ross was just wide open.
Yeah.
And it probably would have been a touchdown. Overall, Barnett had a good game when he was kept clean, a 69.5% or 69.5 grade. When he was not bliss, 70.7. He's a good quarterback. And we were texting about this earlier. When he's pressured, he looks a little rough. But a lot of quarterbacks look rough when pressured. What's really promising, though, is when he's blitzed, he's very good. So what that tells me is when it's a 4-man rush, one of them beats the offensive lineman and he doesn't see them coming, he's going to get clobbered or it's going to be a bad pass. It's going to be rushed. And it's not going to be what he wanted. But if he can pick up the blitz pre-snap, and a blitz is any time that there's more than 4 rushers coming, when he sees that and can pick it up, he's thrown, I believe, 2 touchdowns when blitzed. I believe both of the touchdowns he threw against Charlotte were when he was blitzed. So he knows how to pick it up. He knows what to see. He knows how to read a defense pre-snap. I'm coming around where Alonzo Barnett, on the laundry list of things that may be a little bit of issues for the offense, he's not on the laundry list. And I also, and get him the game reps. I think we were talking about this in the offseason, and it's easy to say this in the offseason when the games aren't being played and you're not in a 13-6 just slug it out fest with Gardner-Webb. Getting Alonzo Barnett these reps could be vastly important for him as a redshirt junior next year and a redshirt senior the year after that. Like, they're winning the games. Alonzo Barnett is doing what he needs to do. And I think this is more beneficial in the long term than starting Dylan Morris, who's gone after this year.
Also, I have seen some Dylan Morris calls. If Dylan Morris was objectively a better quarterback and could go out there right now and perform at a higher level, they would have him in the game. Like, it's not some secret thing where like Dylan Morris is the dude and Alonzo stinks. And once they switch it, it'll work. I think Curt Cignetti had a weird dislike for Jordan McLeod, like almost inexplicable why he disliked him so much that led to some of the issues last year. And then McLeod came in and played pretty well. I also think if Barnett had played for more of the season, he would have played pretty well if he had was given a longer chance, because that was a quarterback friendly scheme that would have went well. And I think it's going to be fine. And you should probably just be patient with the guy who they think has a higher ceiling.
I agree. I'm going to rattle off some fan takes here at you.
Hit me.
I'm tired of hearing about the adjustments they made at halftime. I know it's early in the season. I know Charlotte and Gardner-Webb hasn't put everything out on the field and on tape, so you don't know exactly what you're walking into. But now it's been back-to-back weeks where you're like, we made some adjustments at halftime, and boy, did we come out looking a lot better. My fan brain is like, just start with those adjustments, man. What are we doing? Like against Charlotte, you struggled in the first half, and then Chesney in the post game goes, we changed our blocking angles at halftime, and that really helped. What? And then you start with 3 straight passes against Gardner-Webb in this game, and then in the second half, you make your adjustments, and it's run, touchdown, field goal, drain the clock. Why didn't we just start with that? And I know it's such an oversimplification, but that's where my fan brain goes. We're like, I don't want to hear about the adjustments. Just start with the adjustments already made. And I know it's so much more difficult than that, but I just had to get that off my chest.
It has been weird the last 2 years because last year they had like the third quarters from hell for a while where
Yes.
they were just like dead out of the locker room. It was like, what the F are you doing? Like, and now it seems like they've got these really slow starts. They got to figure it out. We were talking on the To the House podcast with Delvin. He's like, once you do it 3 games in a row, that's a pattern. That's a trend. Like if it happens against North Carolina, that's just red flag. So they've got to figure out the fast start. They've got to come up with a better like script, right? Because some of it they're talking about like teams doing stuff that's unpredictable. You can also do that. You could also do unpredictable, like scripted out stuff. So I think they're going to show more against North Carolina than they did against Gardner-Webb. But at the same time, I don't think they needed to show a lot against Gardner-Webb. They could have just tried to bully them up front. And it seems like they started to do that in the second half. But I was surprised they didn't try to initially go in like, hey, we think we have a good running attack at the G5 level. We should be able to
Bully Gardner-Webb.
bully Gardner-Webb a little. Yeah.
Here's another one. I saw a lot of people talking about, this was JMU's plan. They wanted to keep it vanilla. This was just a vanilla playbook. They didn't want to open things up and give UNC on tape. While that may be partially true, I think the second they go down into the locker room 3-0 and hadn't scored a point, that's out of the playbook. That playbook, that vanilla playbook, they're throwing it out. They're bringing a chocolate playbook into this thing because like you haven't scored. Like I don't think at that point they cared about putting anything on film. Like
you have to win the game.
Yeah, you got to win the game. Like you're not driving down the field going, "Hey, coach, I really want to run this play, but I'm worried if we put it on tape that UNC will be able to." No, they're like, "How do we put points on the scoreboard?" And so I just saw a lot of people like after the game, like trying to. I know it's just like rationalizing why that
trying
happened,
to rationalize why they were bad. Yeah,
but it wasn't because of vanilla playbook. It's because Gardner-Webb came out, punched him in the mouth, and JMU let them hang around.
Yeah, like I don't think it was vanilla either. I think they executed horrendously in the first half. Like they had either wide open dudes where the throw was missed or the read was missed. They had, and it wasn't most of that. It was a lot of like bad drops, or like a run play where a dude just decided not to block. And it was like, oh, if you blocked, like that play would have been sick. So some of it's everyone. Like it's execution, it's play calling. It was all a little bit off, and I think it's fixable. But if they don't like fix it in a hurry, they're going to look like trash against North Carolina because North Carolina's got bigger bodies, faster bodies on defense that if it's that disjointed, it's going to be brutal. And you can't stick your defense on the field against O'Marion Hampton in a North Carolina offense for 35 minutes of the game and expect it to go fine and not give up a touchdown.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That is exactly right. Thank you.
My last kind of thing I got to get off my chest here. Not Coach Chesney, the Twitter account, tweeted, Gardner-Webb led against App State, Coastal, and Liberty in the second half the last 2 seasons. And I've seen other JMU fans say this. I don't care. They all scored. We didn't score against Gardner-Webb. We were held scoreless against an FCS team. Scoreless.
So I don't doubt that Gardner-Webb like treats these games very seriously, had a nice game plan. App State last year beat them by 21. At the end of the game, they still won that by 21. This point conveniently leaves out that East Carolina beat Gardner-Webb 44-0 last year. East Carolina didn't make a bowl game. Okay. App State that like won by 21 was a 5-loss team. They beat JMU. but they had 5 losses also. The Coastal team that they took close is the Coastal team that on this podcast, we constantly referred to them as a fraud. It's not a good thing. Like, it's not a good thing that also happened to JMU.
This is a team that we're all like, college football playoff fringe contender. They should be in the realm of 9 to 10 wins and look dominant. That's not a team that beats Gardner-Webb 13-6 and needs a goal line late fourth quarter stand, which, oh, by the way, coming out of a media timeout on a crucial fourth down, they had backups in. This rotating thing is getting out of hand. I'm going to say it. I'm tired of it. That final fourth down, you're coming out of a media timeout. The game's literally on the line, and they had backups in. They did their job. So hindsight's 2020. But if they had scored, I would have been unbearable.
I also think it can get a lot better. Like, I've still got a lot of hope for this season, but
I do too.
I think the expectations need to be a lot different. Like, nobody should talk about this team as a college football playoff contender until the game against North Carolina ends. And even then, probably don't. But it's one that, like, we'll see what the result is. But it's one that, like, I don't know. I think everyone got a little too far ahead of themselves, probably because of some of the stuff the coaches were saying in the media that was kind of hyping the team up. But, like, look, they looked terrible on Saturday. They didn't look like a college football playoff contender. I'm not sure they looked like an FCS title contender on Saturday. They were pretty bad for a lot of the game, and they rallied a little bit. Second half was definitely better, but they also acted like they played the second half from heaven, right? They acted like they had played the best second half in the history of the program. It was 13-3 in the second half, and that's because Gardner-Webb passed up a field goal late because they needed a touchdown to tie. That was not a dominant second half.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. I had completely forgotten about it, where they were like, the first half was troubling. Second half was good. I mean, honestly, if we're picking nits, touchdown, field goal should have been touchdown, and you should have had at least 2 other drives in there because your defense should have been able to get off the field.
Yeah.
Like, on that first drive down, I was watching with my friend Alex, and I turned to him and I go, okay, this opening drive gives me hope. We're going to win 42-3. And then the offense just sputtered. Like,
yeah.
Field goals against Gardner-Webb, maybe I'm being way too, like, we need more, but field goals against Gardner-Webb aren't something that inspires confidence in me. If I'm a coach, Curt Cignetti would not have been happy at the end. Like, Curt Cignetti post-game, could you imagine that game?
Would have been electric. But yeah, I was a little surprised that they sort of turned it into like, this is huge for us.
Yeah.
What? Are you sure? That's not a great sign. So yeah, I want to see more. Although I'm not totally out on them or totally negative, because I think the problems they had were fixable. I think it's going to get better, but they have to show it. I've gotten to the point now where it's like, I hear what you're saying to the media. I gotta see with my eyes, man. Like, I know you've won a lot of games. Like, I like this coaching staff. I like this roster, but like, I need to see it with my eyes before I'm gonna buy in. Because right now they look like a team that, like, they're probably gonna play in some random early December bowl game and not contend for the Sun Belt East. But if they start to make some improvements, I think they have the talent to be a legitimate Sun Belt contender. They just need to start executing a lot better than they did against Gardner-Webb.
A lot better. Yeah, it's there. Like, it's clearly there. Just got to sound like coaches. Execute, control the controllables.
But look, North Carolina's not, and we'll get into it more next week. North Carolina's not that good.
No. It's a winnable game if they play to the level that we were expecting preseason / like the level of second half Charlotte.
If they lose by more than 14, I think it's damning. Like, I think North Carolina's that average.
I agree.
So I think it's one you should absolutely be in the game. I think the fact that it's a noon game is kind of nice for a few reasons. I can't imagine North Carolina fans are going to be going like crazy at a basketball school for a noon kickoff against a G5 team. Like, it's not going to be that intimidating compared to a night game there where they do get a little bit more rowdy. And then also, like, Alonzo Barnett, I think, has started a little bit nervy. What better way to, like, shake off the nerves than, like, wake up, eat breakfast, and go play? Like, you can't sit around all day and think about it. You're kind of just on the field going at noon. So I think that could go well because his starts in his career so far have all been night games.
Ooh, that's a fun stat.
I think it could help with the nerves to just get out and go with the sun out and like, all right, let's just go.
I like it. And yeah, we'll break down the UNC game a little bit more next week. Can you explain PFF data to me though, real quick? Because this offensive line, my eye test tells me they're not this good. But according
Yeah.
to PFF, the best graded player was Jesse Rammel
Uh-huh.
against Gardner-Webb, an 82.8. The offensive line in general was very good. Can you tell me how PFF figures out its data?
So it's basically like they have people watch the games and they're essentially doing like an eye test and they'll grade from like -2 to 2 with 0 being average and they go in 0.5 increments. So like if you have a 2 on a play, it's like an incredible play for you. If you have a -2, you probably got cooked or just did something horrible. So it's a little bit eye testy. I think the thing that I'm not entirely sure of, they gave up a sack or two in this game where dudes were just unblocked. And I don't think that impacts your pass blocking grade because you didn't have a chance to pass block because whatever the communication was, the dude just was a free rusher. So I think that might be part of it because there's like one sack in the second half where Moffitt, the App State transfer linebacker for Gardner-Webb, just came in like untouched on a sack. So I don't think that hurts their grade, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so their offensive line, they gave up 3 sacks as a team. None of the players were credited with giving up a sack, which means that it was some sort of horrible communication or scheme thing that led to 3 like unblocked sacks, which is bad. But
Which is
seems
another thing where they're like, we're 1 block away. Where it's like, I guess so,
like, yeah,
actually.
literally they're not blocking. So that I think that was something that was particularly interesting about it is that it seemed like some of the guys were not actually giving up sacks, that it was just a weird miscommunication or a scheme thing or a well-timed blitz that they just didn't like properly read. So that's something to keep an eye on because I think the offensive line's been solid, especially in pass protection the last couple of games. I mean, they're third nationally through 2 weeks in pass protection. They had a 95 pass blocking grade against Gardner-Webb. So they had some decent pockets, but I think guys aren't getting as open as they need to get. Maybe there are some misreads, and then occasionally I think the offensive line's not communicating as well as it needs to lead to some free rusher situations. But all that again, I think is fixable. I don't think they had as many like offensive line execution issues in this game. I think the offensive line's starting to find itself a little bit, and you just need to you like to see the run blocking grade go a little bit higher, and then you would also like to some of the skill guys just got to make plays. Like if you get out in open space, you got to make a dude miss. If you're a receiver, you got to run a better route. If the ball's on you, you got to catch it. Like basic level stuff that I think they can improve on. But if they don't, it's going to be a tough watch, I think, at times this season.
Yeah. Defensively, with all that PFF breakdown and that background,
Yeah.
defensively, I'm a little worried about the linebacking core.
Yeah, those tackling grades aren't so hot.
Tackling gate grades are a little rough. Torres Jones, 28th out of 29 in run defense as well, which is kind of shocking because coming into the year, we thought that was going to be his strength. Probably plays into the fact that he's last in tackling grade, along with Emmanuel Bush, Terry Lockett, and DJ Barksdale are kind of the bottom 4 guys. That's a little worrisome.
I think they're getting really dinged Jones specifically for just his limited snaps because he had a much better game against Gardner-Webb. Trent Hendricks struggled a bit tackling. His tackling grade was a 32.6. He was a 34 against Charlotte, 32.6 against Gardner-Webb. He played 55 snaps against Gardner-Webb. Torres Jones played 15.
That is odd.
I'm not sure I'm on board with that snap split, to be honest with you, especially in the FCS game, given what Jones can do against the run. He is a really good run defender. Gardner-Webb was not doing anything so like unique in the passing game that he would have been that much of a liability in coverage. I'm surprised that they only gave him 15 snaps. Like he graded out pretty well. He graded out a good bit higher than Hendrick in some categories too. So I don't know. Like if you're rotating that much, like maybe we find ways to play Torres Jones more because I think he's good.
Also a little bit worrisome. 5 of the worst 6 tacklers were all starters.
Yeah.
So guys who are getting some of the most snaps, struggling to tackle. But Jacob Thomas, he's coming off of a great Charlotte game. He's the 6th worst tackler, but he was one of the best. I think when you're doing stuff, there's sometimes just like one play may really ding you and it pulls you down a good bit. But that is an interesting little tidbit. Kyrie Mans has been the best defender for JMU up to this point. He's been an absolute beast coming off of the edge. But it's also interesting as things start to shake out. The snap splits have just been very different from game 1 to game 2. I think they're starting to find their best 11, at least defensively, because Jones getting less snaps, Hendrick getting more. You're seeing other guys like Chris Sheeran begin to get some more snaps.
Yeah.
Sheeran had a fantastic game for JMU. He had the most snaps of any player not a starter. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they can do and how they can keep going there. I'd like to see a little more out of the defensive tackles, to be honest with you. I feel like they've been maybe a little bit underwhelming. Bush, McMullen, some of those guys in there. Chris Fitzgerald, I think, had a nicer game this week. He had a sack, so he started to show a little bit. But
he's very
yeah,
good. I think Fitzgerald might be our best defensive lineman.
Yeah, defensive line, I want to see a bit more, and they're going to have to hold their own a little bit better, I think, against Gardner-Webb. Nice grade for Eric O'Neill, who seems like he's kind of coming into form. I thought his second half against Charlotte was a little more disruptive. I thought against Gardner-Webb, he was making a few plays. So hopefully they can start to build that rhythm and get things going. The defense by no means has been bad, but defensive line could use a little more disruption.
I think the defense is just different. Like the defense is not the defense of what it was under Bryant Haynes. This defense it's a Lyle Hemphill defense. They're going to look for turnovers. They're going to try and get turnovers, bend, don't break. And heck, that's worked out well for them. They've only allowed one touchdown, and that one touchdown they allowed was a beat away from being a Jacob Thomas monster sack on Max Brown.
A strip sack, yeah.
So like
that's a good point.
This defense is very different. If they can just start to maybe get teams off the field, then we'll see things. Because I mean, specifically on fourth down, it's just insane that Gardner-Webb went for 50% of their fourth downs they faced.
I mean, they were getting after it. They had some nice calls on fourth down too.
Yeah. But all right. That brings us to everyone's favorite segment. It's time for News or Snooze, presented by Cinnamon Bear Bakery. If you're in Harrisonburg, next time you're in Harrisonburg, be sure to check out Cinnamon Bear. They're right across the street from the Atlantic Union Bank Center, a fantastic bakery, deli, everything you need. Do you want to start with this very first one from Cole Potts?
Yes.
All right. Here's our very first News or Snooze, brought to you by Cole Potts.
And play who we are as who JMU really is. We weren't doing that in the first half, and we needed to bring that out for the second half and do what we do.
You mentioned the first half wasn't JMU football. Just what were they doing that made it such a struggle offensively?
I wouldn't say it was what they were doing. I would just say it's what we were doing. I'd say like we just underestimated them a little bit. We were loafing a little bit, just some missed blocks. I wouldn't say anything they were doing was exponential or anything. Like we were hurting ourselves, I'd say.
Bennett, News or Snooze?
That was very newsworthy to me because Bob Chesney had said during the week that this was just as much JMU's Super Bowl as it was Gardner-Webb's. And then you had, I think Dobbs had also made a comment about like there were some guys in the locker room who thought they were going to win because they had JMU on their jersey. It was like, that's very different than what your coach said earlier in the week about how you guys were going to approach the game.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little scary that like there's that much of a disconnect where the coach is going on every single media outlet going just like, this is our biggest game of the season. We're not going to underestimate them. We know they're going to come in trying to pull the upset. We have to treat this like our Super Bowl. This is super important. And then the players are like, yeah, we didn't take this seriously. And it's like, wait, did he tell you what he was telling us? Did you, what?
Not a great look. A little bit of a disconnect there, which I'm interested to monitor, right? Like if you're a team leader like a Potts or a Dobbs, can you get guys to buy into whatever message Chesney is sending? Because it sounds like they kind of tuned him out last week.
Big time. And this is week 2.
If you lose that game, how different does it go, right? Because things are still going well. You're still undefeated. You got to listen to what the coach is saying, you would think. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm very interested in that disconnect. That was surprising to me.
Week 2, and they're already a disconnect. Chesney's a winner. Chesney has a ton of wins under his belt. He's won everywhere he goes, but this is probably his most difficult challenge.
Well, I think it's like maybe not the hardest in terms of like the talent, but like he's never had expectations anywhere near this.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
and then also having to like rebuild the entire team with just like a bunch of
Yes.
transfers that you've pulled
Yeah.
in like Holy Cross was Holy Cross dudes.
Yes. And nobody expects a rebuild.
Yeah. And then you come in here, you're expected to not only rebuild in half of an offseason, you're then expected to compete for the college football playoff / a good bowl game. Oh, by the way, you have 61, 64,
It's like
whatever it is,
61 or
new players. A majority of them are seniors.
right.
Like it's tough, which again, going back to our very first point of the podcast, you could have tempered expectations and I don't think we'd be this upset.
It's going to be fast. The UNC game is going to tell a lot.
I mean, if he had just been what he's saying now in these post-game pressers of like, there's a lot of new players. We like what we have. They're coming together very well. We play the name game. But at the end of the day, bringing together 64 new players within 2 months is a tremendously difficult thing to do. I would be like, okay, the Gardner-Webb game is more understandable. But they went to the pool, man. They went to the pool.
Yeah. They all right. Let's do a let's see. I want to do a PFF grade and then a quote here
Okay.
to wrap it up. But there's a lot of good PFF grades that I think make for some fascinating topics. Okay, let's go with news or snooze. You have, let's see, the offensive line had a lot of the green. So you've got Tanner Morris, 71.2 grade. Jesse, you mentioned Ramel with an 82.8. Riley Robel only played a few snaps, was really good again, 68.9. Cole Potts, 69.5. News or snooze that the offensive line graded well against Gardner-Webb?
I think it's newsworthy because when you watched the game, your eye test maybe told you something otherwise because of the unblocked rushers. Some throws from Barnett were well over people's heads, maybe moved off of his spot a little bit more. But at the end of the day, they were good. They provided enough time for Alonzo Barnett to work through some things. And I think at the end of the day, Barnett really wasn't the issue either. Like a quarterback is going to miss a throw here and there. That is just kind of the nature of the beast. What isn't the nature of the beast is your wide receivers dropping passes the way they were in this game. I think the offensive line did what they needed to do. I think that Alonzo Barnett did what he needed to do. I think the offensive line having that grade just kind of tells you, okay, they're not the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I mean, it's just a weird game, man, because there were articles after the game about how the offensive line sucked. And then you go back and watch it and you look at the grades, it's like, I don't think that's accurate. Like, I don't think the offensive line sucked.
What? So why do you think? Because I was in that boat too. After the game, I thought the offensive line was bad, and I was kind of awakened with. I mean, I love PFF grades, I love stats, I love the nerdiness of it. But why do you think that we all thought in the first hour after that game, we're all trying to reconcile a 13-6 win over Gardner-Webb that required a goal line stand late in the fourth quarter? We're reconciling it, and we all point to the offensive line as being the issue. Why do you think that is? Is it because of the just unblocked rushers that sacked Alonzo Barnett 3 times? Is it because that the running game was kind of iffy at times? Is it because that it just seemed that Barnett didn't have time?
I think it's because most people, myself included, a lot of the time are idiots. Like people probably don't know like what they're watching. There are many times where I don't. I have to go back and like rewatch stuff or check the grades and like see how it all lines up. But like most people's football IQ is probably pretty low. And I think that's part of it. So when like it's all the immediate like fan reactions, right? It's like, oh, the offensive line sucks. Like that's why they suck. Or it's like this quarterback sucks. Bench him. He's terrible and I hate him. And then you go back and watch it and it's like, no, like that's because it's nobody ever blames receivers unless they see a receiver physically drop the ball. Like nobody is watching on TV, sees a receiver go out of screen running around and then assumes that the route wasn't good. But like maybe that's what's happening, right? Like maybe the guy goes out of your frame and his route stinks and Barnett's like, what are you doing? Has nowhere to go with it. And then it ends up to like this bad drive. There were these poorly timed penalties. There were a lot of things. It was all out of sync. but I don't think it's any one unit. I don't think it's like Dean Kennedy, you're an idiot. Alonzo Barnett, you stink. The offensive line's trash. None of those things are true. I think they're just a little out of sync, and they can sync things up more and make it happen. I also think they lost Reggie Brown, Elijah Surratt, Phoenix Sproles, and for the first time, they're struggling to replace players because Kurt Signetti is a really good coach and nobody gave them any credit and had all this revisionist history about like, oh my God, I hated his attitude. He was really good at preparing teams to play. He was really good at reloading a roster. Maybe it's going a little bit harder at receiver this year.
That was really nice.
I want to see more, but at the same time, I don't think they're bad. Like people are like, oh my God, they suck. I don't think they suck.
I love it when you get on a soapbox.
Thank you. Okay, last one. We need something here. Let's go. I was going to go quote. I'll still go quote. So they were saying, this is not even a specific quote. It was Dobbs after the game was saying, like, that won't happen again. Potts was saying, it's gonna, like, you're gonna be proud of us at some point this season. What is your thoughts? Is it newsworthy or snoozeworthy that week 2 undefeated JMU players are like having to vouch for themselves as like, we're not gonna let you down, JMU fans?
I think it's newsworthy. It's kind of like, maybe this is going to be really tough and it's going to be mean of me. I've never seen such an uninspired performance.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
They came out, Cole Potts said it. They underestimated Gardner-Webb. They looked like it. They just were going through the motions. Even Cole Potts during his post-game presser was like, I missed some blocks. I missed plenty of blocks. What? Brother, you're like the most experienced guy on the... I appreciate like the honesty, and like I really do appreciate the honesty. And I think Cole Potts is going to bounce back and be one of the top offensive linemen on that line, along with Carter Sweezy, Tanner Morris. The interior, I think, will be fine of the offensive line. Tyshawn, I'm getting on a tangent. It just was like a completely uninspired game. And when there are so many question marks, it is also a little worrisome that right after this game, you played maybe the worst game of your career. And again, this goes back to like Chesney didn't have to say all of that in the offseason. Also, after this game, you don't have to be saying you'll be proud of us one day. And like even Chesney's kind of like, that wasn't our standard, the boos, we deserved it. And like trying to be like, we understand what went wrong. We're going to work hard to make sure that things go right here on out. That's also something you don't really have to say as much.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm nitpicking, but like, especially with the players going like, one day you'll be proud of us. Like, we're going to show that we can live up to the JMU standard. Does that mean they're not? Like, is there already a disconnect in the locker room? Now I'm over analyzing every single word you're saying. I'm over analyzing everything that I see coming out. You didn't have to say that. Because now I think that you don't believe it. Like, I think you're almost saying it to try and inspire some of the other guys in your locker room. And look, it's tough. We all talk about JMU culture. The standard is the standard. Championship mindset. We all talk about that. We expect that. But when you bring in so many new guys, it's tough to have culture. It's even tougher to have culture, and I'm doing air quotes around it, when the guy who had the culture the last 5 years is gone. The guy who took the heartbeat of the team at many position groups, they're in Bloomington, Indiana. It's tough to reset a culture. And I think Jacob Dobbs and Cole Potts are doing a great job of trying to be those leaders to reset it. But it's tough, and it's a little worrisome. It's newsworthy that they're both in their post-game pressers being like,
yeah,
that wasn't the standard. We will get back to the standard, and you guys will be proud of us.
They also, through the first 2 weeks, the offensive line, just all of them have better grades in gap blocking versus zone blocking on run plays. So like gap blocking, you're sort of picking a gap, like this play is designed to create a gap here, where zone blocking is more so like the running back is going to like flow through and find a gap. The dudes against Gardner-Webb, I think in the second half, that drive, I assume, was probably just gap blocking. Like, we're creating a hole here, you go here, we're doing it. Very simple. They executed it to perfection. They also did that a lot better against Charlotte. I'm not opposed to the occasional, like, let's oversimplify it a little bit and be like, we think we have good blockers when we tell them to block directly here and create a hole here. So that would have made more sense, I think, against Gardner-Webb too. I believe they would love to have sort of that zone running scheme, which when you have it working and the running back is able to like find different holes is electric. But if it's not working, maybe some more gap stuff is what fits this offensive line.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, that's News or Snooze. Presented by Cinnamon Bear. Next time you're in Harrisonburg, check out Cinnamon Bear Bakery right across the street from the Atlantic Union Bank Center. Some listener questions here to wrap us up before we talk about some football.
Yeah.
John Craig, is this the coach's MO to build slowly? Were we overconfident in looking past Gardner-Webb? Yes. Well, we weren't. We're fans. We're allowed to. But I think the team was. The team even said it.
Yeah. I don't know what their style is in terms. Well, building slowly in the past, yes, for like years, like 3-year builds, because they were taking over programs that were bad. So I don't know exactly what their growth throughout a season looks like, but I imagine Chesney would like them to get incrementally better every week.
Depressed Duke Dog. Do you think Penny gains more time or has solid contribution with Hudson back? He had great run blocks and be a good safety net for AB to gain confidence with his big size.
His run blocking was very good. I think he had 1 target and drew a pass interference. So, like, yeah, I'd like to see some more targets. I think the issue with him is I don't know how much separation he's creating compared to some of the other guys. I think that's part of the reason he's not getting a crazy high snap count.
Yeah, Breon Penny played just 13 snaps. 6 of them were on passes. 7 of them were on run blocking. He finished with an 89.2 run blocking grade, which is the highest.
Very good at run blocking.
Which is the highest of all players, beating out Jesse Ramil's 79.6. But you're only in there for 13 plays. And that's coming off
everyone else blocked very well on gap runs.
How many snaps did he play in week 1? He played a lot more snaps in week 1. He played 24 snaps in week 1, 10 pass blocking, 14 run blocking. He only had a 46.1 run blocking.
He had like the lowest run blocking grade in week 1, and then in week 2 is the highest. So he came out and was a beast in the run game.
Yeah, and also take everything we're saying with these PFF numbers a grain of salt, because it is so early in the season that like one good performance vastly changes.
Yeah.
So like worst to best, now he's like middle of the pack.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but it's fun to like to overanalyze each and every one. JMU _71. How much more will the playbook be opened up against the holes?
Tar holes.
How much do you think we've held back in the first 2? I kind of said it earlier. This is I don't think they held much back against Gardner-Webb.
I think it'll be more opened up, but I also, I don't think they were like needing a goal line stand. Like, hold on, run just a base coverage here. Like, I do think at a certain point they wanted to go in vanilla, didn't work, and they're like, shoot, like let's make sure we win. I don't think they were holding a lot back. They might have some more like trick play kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but
trick play stuff maybe, but I don't think they were like, wait, we can't drop Kyrie Manson to coverage on this play from this because we don't want the Tar Heels to like these and even the Charlotte game, like you're down 7-3 at one point. I don't think they're like, hold on, guys. We can't run this play because we can't put it on film for a month from now.
It wasn't like they don't have a vanilla playbook that's like Barnett drops back, Ymir Knight runs a curl, Barnett puts it 8 yards over his head, or like 4th down in the vanilla playbook, Logan Kyle is supposed to drop the pass. Like that's just them executing poorly.
Yeah.
Like that was designed fine. Vanilla playbook, not vanilla playbook. Like it wasn't, a lot of those weren't the play calls. It was just like they didn't execute. And then there were a couple where maybe the play call didn't work out for how it was very disjointed.
JMU Duck.
JMU Duck.
JMU Dukes. Is it just me or did our offensive and defensive lines look smaller than theirs? I think it's just you.
I've been hearing a lot of that where people are like, oh, the line looks too small. It's like Chris Fitzgerald's like short, but he's like 305 pounds. They've got size on the lines. I don't think that's an issue. And I also think they executed decent. I don't know. I think it's easy when a team plays badly to be like, well, our lines suck. But I don't think that's the case here.
according to all of the numbers, the offensive line did exactly what they needed to do all game. The execution was just not there. The defensive line could maybe start to produce more tackles for losses and more sacks, but like when you've allowed, I know you're kind of in a different camp in this because they just allowed 34 minutes time of possession to Gardner-Webb. But at the end of the day, if you forced 5 turnovers in 2 games and have allowed 1 touchdown in 120 minutes of game action, that's pretty good.
They also would probably have a better, in fairness to the defense, they would have a better time of possession. 1, sure, if they created more tackles for loss, or 2, if the offense didn't stink in the first half. Like if the offense put drives together and stopped punting, then it wouldn't have been a 34-minute to 26-minute disadvantage.
Yes. Thoughts on the JMU hype guy? Did I miss out on
I
a
don't know
hype
what
guy?
that is. Sorry.
Jake
Somebody's gonna have to
Nelson.
inform us, yeah.
Jake Nelson, please let us know what the JMU hype guy is. I assume maybe it was someone on the broadcast that
It
I just
must have been
missed.
something that I missed.
JMU_71. JMU_71 asked a lot of great questions. I think the offensive line needs to work on their communication. What do you see as the biggest thing for the team to work on during the bye? I think communication's a good one considering all 3 sacks were untouched rushers.
I gotta go back and look at the other 2. The one sack I remember very vividly being untouched. Communication's a good one, and then just like, I don't know, not effing stuff up. They have like way too many plays that are there that is just like the throws a hair off and the catch isn't there. Where if they can just tighten everything up a little, the offense is not that far off.
But it's off.
But it is off. So like they got to clean it up. But it's not like not like they're all covered and Barnett like is getting sacked and then throws it up to a covered receiver and it's picked. Like that's not happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it's off. Like it's off enough where like they could lose badly to UNC if they don't fix it.
Yeah, you got to catch the ball and like, yeah, absolutely.
JMU_71. How would you recommend we attack the holes? Do we the Tar Heels? Do we try to strike quickly with down the field throws and gadget plays, or more ball control style? I think you got to play your style of offense, and that's aggressiveness. That's deep shots, something they did not do against Gardner-Webb. Kind of just insane that you against Charlotte, you're like, here's 3 deep passes, all of them connect. We look excellent on things down the field of 20 yards or more, and we're really super aggressive on 4th down. Then against Gardner-Webb, they're like, what if we don't do any of that?
Yeah, also like if you score 13 points against Gardner-Webb and get shut out in the first half, I think the answer to this question is like anything that'll work, man. If ball control works, run ball control. If a deep shot works, try a deep shot. I don't think they're going to go in like we're going to try to do. They're going to do anything possible to score because it was a slugfest against Gardner-Webb.
And last question from JMU_71. You can probably answer this better. What happened to AB3's hand? Was it stepped on or did he hit it on someone's helmet? Because it was gushing blood there in the
Gushing
first
blood, so I would assume a step. I don't know that a helmet like bump usually doesn't lead to that kind of like cut, but I'm not. It was bleeding a lot, yeah.
And he returned and continued to play. Kind of an underreported on thing of the game because I imagine throwing hand, gushing blood, open sore probably isn't the best to like have a good game.
No, I think it was on the back at least, like the back of his hand.
Okay, not like
it
on
wasn't
the
like
fingertip.
he wasn't gonna have to like but it was still not great. And then Dylan Morris came in through a picture perfect pitch that was dropped, led to a 7-yard loss. That was also another thing disjointed, right? Is like you have your backup quarterback come in and the first play that you call is a pitch. Like how many times has Dylan Morris pitched the ball to Io in recent weeks? Probably not a lot. Why are we doing that?
I had some questions for Dean Kennedy throughout that entire game. We're like, clearly he knows what he's like. I think this is the frustrating part where it's like you're scheming guys open. You clearly know how to pick apart an opposing defense, but then you open the game with 3 passes. You have Dylan Morris pitch it. Against Charlotte, there were points where it was like run when you knew that like they were getting great penetration and it was going to end up being 3rd and 9. And then you're putting this quarterback who looks a little nervy in the first half into a 3rd and throw situation against a good defensive line in Charlotte in week 1. You're just like, what are we doing, man? But then he has these schemed up plays where it's like, oh, he's wide open and the catch wasn't there. The throw was just off. So like he knows what he's doing, but I think he needs some help with writing out his script and like play sequencing.
Let's try a different sequence. We also had a question that was replied to on Jake's question,
Okay.
which I think was an accident. But how can they get Petaway more involved early in the passing game to get to get Barnett more confident in finding open receivers?
See, reading questions is harder than it looks.
I know. I thought
Um,
those were separate questions, but it's one.
I'm going to be interested to see how they work Petaway in with Io injured / not injured,
Yeah,
but then Petaway showing that like he may be the best running back in that room,
and it's a revenge game.
and it's a revenge game. I think you just kind of got to do like Petaway might be the best athlete on the field.
He's a good athlete.
Get him in space. This is kind of what we've been saying with Solomon Van Horst for years.
Yes, he's the new Van Horse.
But like, hand him the ball, pitch it to the outside, get him where he's one-on-one with the defender. Because any day of the week, I'm taking Petaway over a defender.
Yeah, I think keep doing what they're doing. They've done a nice job of finding ways to get him the ball.
Maybe even more. Like
He
get him
led
the
him
ball.
in receiving and rushing,
That's not good that he let him in receiving, but that's another.
especially not with 4 for 32.
Yeah, that 88 JMU 2 at the Browns 40349. What happened to Torres Jones? He went from being a dude 2 years ago before the injury to being invisible in the limited snaps he gets.
Not giving him any snaps.
I mean, yeah, but his tackling grade's been a little off. His run,
But it was better. It was better this week. He had an improved performance, but 15 snaps, what are you supposed to do? That's like nothing.
I also love the 2 deep where it's like we're going to run 3 linebackers and they run not 3 linebackers.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of Torres Jones. I think he could be a dude, and I'm not sure they're using him properly yet.
Could be. When are they going to bench Barnett, Kevin? They're not.
He's going to have to play so much worse than he has played to get benched. Like,
Because he's not been playing poorly.
No, he's not the problem. No, he does, like, when he gets an open guy on a 7-yard curl, put it on his body. Like, that would help.
I think he just needs to take a deep breath. Maybe take a page out of the J.J. McCarthy book and just go meditate underneath the goalpost.
Yeah. But I think noon game will change that, man. He's going to be so calm for this noon game. It's the night. He's not a night guy.
That might be it. I should have asked him that at media day. So morning or night, dude?
He might be a morning guy. They practice in the morning usually.
Joey Needham asked, I'm going from, because last week he asked, does Barnett have aura? I'm going from, does Barnett have aura to, is he the guy? Seeing a recurring theme of him missing easy completions, which hurts our offensive flow. I love his deep ball and running ability. But if you see a slow start against UNC, could we see Morris get a shot?
I think if they start slow against UNC, they would just eat a blowout loss. Like, I think they would rather get their teeth kicked in and go through the motions and get a little more confidence in Barnett and try to figure out why they're bad than switch quarterbacks.
I also would love to see like more runs with Barnett that are designed to
Go the Sluka route, man. Power this man right through North Carolina's defense. Gap run, gap QB power.
It just like get it going. Like get his confidence there. I think Barnett still has aura. I think he's been that Gardner-Webb game. I'm hoping that at the end of the season we throw that game out like it never happened.
It's possible. I will say, in Dean Kennedy's defense, he tried. He tried to build his confidence early. He ran a wide open, like, curl, and he just put it over his head, like, into the sideline.
Yeah,
like that's
an inexcusable.
I don't know what you're supposed to do.
That's an inexcusable.
You got to make that.
That's something Barnett has to hit. I did tweet after the game some things I'm interested in to hear about from Chesney. Is Barnett the QB1 going into UNC? And I think I worded that poorly because it wasn't me trying to question, is Barnett like the quarterback 1 capability? But I would have asked that question more so trying to see what Chesney's confidence was in the young quarterback post game. Like he made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I would assume the answer is yes, he's the quarterback 1, but like, is Morris even right there behind him? Was there ever even a thought? Mainly just trying to get like like, you know what I mean?
We also thought we were going to get like a backup at the end of this game because we thought it was going to be like a 40-point win.
Yes.
So we still have no idea other than like being able to execute a small pitch to his left what Dylan Morris is capable of. So it's all, I think that's leading to some of the questions with fans. But maybe you get Barnett into the game by running it. Like maybe that's how you get rid of the nerves, is you let like a linebacker tackle him and he's like, all right, we're into the game. This is football.
Yes. I also think that's what a weird script to start with pass, punt.
Bad.
Yeah.
But I get it though, because it was open. Like he schemed stuff open and he missed it.
You're right. But
I really think they could have just went gap runs, like kill them here, boom, and do that and do what they did in the first half. And then you can honestly let him calm down, like by handing the ball off and just taking snaps. I don't know.
This question just came into my mind though. Is it worrisome that we're like, our starting quarterback has to be lulled into a game so he's not too nervy?
Yes. Yes, that is worrisome. I think there's a lot of things to be worried about. I also think they can get better. And then like if they lay an egg against North Carolina, like Ball State, ULM still kind of stink. Like you could realistically, still might not know a ton about them until the Coastal game when they play Coastal and then Georgia Southern, they really get into Sun Belt play.
Yeah. God.
But I think they're going to put up a good fight against North Carolina. I really do. I think they're going to be crisper. I think they're going to have a better scheme. I think defensively, they're going to be able to hang in there against a backup quarterback who against Charlotte did make some mistakes. Hampton got dinged up a little. I think he'll be fine, but like he missed some of the second half against Charlotte.
But our game isn't until 2 weeks from today.
I mean, I think he'll be fine, like health-wise, but at the same time, if you're a one-man show and it's a running back and you're not named Ashton Jeanty, I'm probably not that scared.
You're not wrong. I hope when we're watching that game, not this Saturday, but next Saturday at noon on ACC Network, that Barnett begins the game like 4 for 5 for 60 yards.
I do love that they can flip the script and go more to like the Bob Chesney historic thing of like they're the underdog against a power team. I like that role for them a lot more.
Okay.
Than being the heavy hitter. Because Holy Cross was like, you watch them play against South Dakota State and they were taking chances. They ended up losing by 21 because they faded hard late. But I think they're going to take a bunch of chances and put up a nice fight in this one because they know like there's not a lot to lose. There's no reason they should get tight or play with pressure.
I like it. We'll break down that game more, try to get on a UNC beat writer, see what exactly the Tar Heels are doing this season. Speaking of playing hard with nothing to lose, JMU men's soccer, they took down number 14 Georgetown. Their last 4 regular season games against ranked opponents, they've yet to lose. So I believe they have a draw in there, but they are what is it? You know what I'm trying to say.
They're playing well. They're 1-0-3, so they're time machines this year. But that was a nice win for them. They've got obviously the Sun Belt men's soccer is pretty legit. So they got a nice team though. They play well.
Yeah, and that West Coast swing to start the season, I think we talked about it a few podcasts ago, at CSUN and then at number 21 UCLA, did not allow a goal across 180 minutes of action.
Yeah.
Of course, didn't score a goal in 180 minutes of action either. But like defensively, a very good squad. Of their 4 games they've played, they've allowed 2 goals. Both of them came against NC State after that West Coast swing. So I think men's soccer has the potential to be a defensive force if they can get their offense going and start to, average a goal a game or 1.5 goals a game. They may be in the running to win the Sun Belt.
They'll be competitive, I think, for sure.
All right. Anything else you got to add before we get up on out of here?
I don't think so. Nothing right now.
All right. For Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning into the JMU Sports News Network presented. I messed that up. For Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning into the JMU Sports News podcast presented by Bet Online. We'll be back next week previewing UNC. In the meantime, you can stay updated at JMU Sports News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And you can check out our home on the web, jmusportsnews.com.